In 1985, 17 years after his death in a prisoner of war camp in South Vietnam, Sergeant William Port was buried with full military honors in Arlington Cemetery. Bill Port was born in October 1941 and lived in Petersburg. Petersburg is a small town located in the mountains of central Pennsylvania. Erected in 1970, the monument to Sergeant Port is located at the town's main intersection. Bill lived in a small greenhouse next to the railroad tracks. Beyond the tracks were the Power Dam and the Juniata River. Mrs. Cecil Port still resides in Petersburg. She talks about Bill's school days with Juniata Valley seniors Matt Hearn and Ashley Scalia.
The first question is, did he like school?
Not too well.
What did he like the most about school?
Well, he was in for sports. He liked the sport part of it.
What years was he at Juniata Valley High School?
In the late 50s.
Okay, and you said he liked sports. What specific sports did he like?
He played football and baseball.
And do you know how many years he played?
Well, he played about 3 years.
Okay, Mrs. Port, William D. Port, did he have any favorite hobbies, per se, during his childhood?
He liked to hunt. Him and his daddy and his brothers would all go out. Usually he'd come back with first one I think he got was a 6-point.
Bill Port left Petersburg in 1959. Ashley Scalia and Huntington Daily News reporter Polly McMullen talked to Mrs. Port about Bill's departure.
What did William Port do after high school?
He left for a job down in Elizabethtown. There he met his wife and got married.
How did he become involved in the service?
He was drafted.
Do you know any of the feelings he had about basic training?
He liked basic training. He said it was tough, but he liked it.
McMullen talks to Mrs. Port about the letters she received from her son.
After he was arrived in Vietnam, you received letters and quite a few pictures from what we've seen in your album. Can you remember what some of those letters told you about his life over there?
Well, mostly he talked about the weather. Some days it would just pour, and out of the blue it just quit. Then the next thing you turn around, it was raining, pouring again. It was awful hot and dry, even though it rained like that. He said it was, and it was more like a jungle that he was in. But he didn't like it, and he said that you had to watch the children because they'd sneak up at night and try to get whatever they could off of you, and they carried knives. And they were just young children. But he didn't care much for the war.
Did he talk about back home that he missed anything in particular, Mom's home cooking or the surrounding Petersburg? Is there anything that he told you that he missed?
Yeah, he told me that he missed us, that and then he wrote around Christmas time, he wrote that he would like to have a box and some of my homemade cookies, which I sent him.
I saw a picture in your album of him displaying a box full of Christmas items, and that was from home.
Yeah, that was in December was the last correspondence from me.
Dear family, Christmas out there was really something. At midnight on Christmas Eve, the mortars and tracks and tanks and all of the 1st Cavalry artillery sent up an absolutely thunderous barrage of high-altitude flares. It was quite a show. I believe few people have seen fireworks like these. Then, when all had quieted down and the flares had gone out, the whole area calmed and hushed, and we could just hear one of the fire bases start singing Silent Night. Then it was picked up by the other positions around us and by everyone. It echoed through the valley for a long time and died out slowly. I'm positive it has seldom been sung with more gut feeling and pure homesick emotion. A strange and beautiful thing in this terribly death-ridden land. It is something I will always remember.
Private William Port was a member of Company C, 5th Battalion, 7th Cavalry, 1st Air Cavalry Division in South Vietnam. On January 12, 1968, Private Port's unit engaged the enemy forces in the area of Khe Sanh. After heavy fighting, Private Port was wounded and taken prisoner. He was put in a prisoner of war camp at Ban Phien. He died at the camp 10 months later. For his heroic actions during the battle, he was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor on August 6, 1970. Here is the official citation of his valor.
As Sergeant Port's platoon was moving to cut off a reported movement of enemy soldiers, the platoon came under heavy fire from an entrenched enemy force. The platoon was forced to withdraw due to the intensity and ferocity of the fire. Although wounded in the hand, as the withdrawal began, Sergeant Port, with complete disregard for his own safety, ran through the heavy fire to assist a wounded comrade back to the safety of the platoon perimeter. As the enemy forces assaulted in the perimeter, Sergeant Port and 3 comrades were in the position behind an embankment when an enemy grenade landed in their midst. Sergeant Port, realizing the danger to his fellow soldiers, shouted the warning grenade and unhesitatingly hurled himself towards the grenade to shield his comrades from the explosion. Through his exemplary courage and devotion, he saved the lives of his fellow soldiers and gave members of his platoon the inspiration needed to hold their position. Sergeant Port's conspicuous gallantry, selfless concern for his comrades, and intrepidity at the risk of his own life above and beyond the call of duty are in keeping with the highest tradition of the military service and reflect great credit on himself, his unit, and the United States Army.
Can you tell us about the ceremony at the White House that you remember?
Well, it happened back in 1970, and I was quite young, so I don't remember a whole lot about it. I just remember being in a large room with other families who were recipients as well as the Congressional Medal of Honor. And President Nixon was up front of the room with some, I guess, different aides, and he was giving a speech, and then he proceeded on to award the Medal of Honor to different individuals of the families.
What can you tell me about your father's funeral at Arlington?
Well, I had him buried in October, I believe it was October 11th, 1985. They had a beautiful ceremony for him. The ceremony was held at Fort Myer Chapel, and it was just totally awesome. They had guards standing at each entrance of the different roadways in an Arlington Cemetery, and they had a horse-drawn carriage, and they did a 21-gun salute and taps, and it was just beautiful. My mother had compared it to that of President Kennedy's funeral.
You seem to stand out in a crowd.
In November of 1991, the Juniata Valley High School class of 1992 began what will become a traditional memorial ceremony for William D. Port. The class voted to lay a wreath at his grave and have a moment of silent prayer in his memory. In this way, the Juniata Valley School District will continue to honor this soldier of valor. May we never forget the lives lost and the honor restored by the heroes of America's armed forces.
It must be that you have a hero's heart. What makes you so special? What makes you stand so tall? If I could put my finger on the answer, then I might be the one